Excellent. Happy Father's Day, everybody. That is right. Here we are for episode 501. So I hope you all enjoyed what I was able to put together for episode 500. It seemed like we had a pretty good time. And I, of course, had to redo the sound, because, but glad it's all good. No, Benson did not go to the protest with us. Oh, let's turn that off. Let's click over here to the host and chat, and let's go ahead and get the Q&A box set up as we are wont to do for our shows here. Please put your questions here. Thank you. And I'll make sure I spell everything right this week. All right. Start Q&A. All right, good. So let's flip that over. And let me throw that right up there so I can see those things as your questions come in. And I'll be able to throw them up on the screen. Okay, so... yes. All right, I think we're all in order here. Where to start today? Well, actually, let's go ahead and start with our classic beginnings here. Let's go ahead and click over to our Benson Cam, and this is a best of Benson Cam. In other words, this is from 2024 actually. Benson actually looks an incredibly like this right now, but he was sleeping today when I came over before the show to get some Benson Cam. He was just crashed out. It's been very warm here in Denver, Colorado this week, and it's only going to get warmer. In fact, it's going to get blisteringly hot. We are anticipating 90s, and next weekend 100 triple-digit temperatures here. And I think as as that affects Benson very much, actually. And so he's a little trimmer than this right now, but that's our little bundle of furry joy. Let's flip back over here. Yes, that is the legend that is Benson. That is right. So my little puppy is awesome, and he's just such a good little doggy. We did not take him to the protest yesterday. I see some questions coming in on that, so we'll go ahead and hold off on any sort of monologuing about that. I'll give you some answers as we as the show moves on. But yeah, these temperatures are not a joke. I've got a window fan here, which is not going right now because it's so noisy, and we've got some blackout curtains around the house. We put them in the bedroom, and boy, did that make a difference in the sleeping. I highly recommend if you can throw some blackout curtains in your bedroom. If you have a sunlight issue, solved. And boy, does that help with the sleep a little bit. But with the summer and everything happening, I am sorry, I've got a little bit of allergy action going, so I'm sorry if I have to blow my nose during the show here. Ugh, absolutely horrible, but better that than I'm... It's just summer out every year. It's like this. It's the pollen or whatever in the air, and it just drives me a little... Okay. Yeah, as I understand it, we temperature-wise, this is how it's going to be, and I think that as the years progress, it's only going to go up. And maybe some of you out there don't agree with that or hope it's going to be different or something, but nah, this is kind of how it's going to be. Anyway, there was a point I wanted to make today real fast, and then we'll get on with your questions. 2 points. Point number one is I'm really glad you guys enjoyed the part one of my live stream this last week about Inside the Mind of L. Ron Hubbard. There will be part two coming on Tuesday, and if we need to do more after that, I have not gauged if that's going to get us all the way through the rest of the affirmations. I doubt it, because there's a lot to get through. There will be a part three, and maybe I'll do that in this next week or roll it over to the week after. But on Tuesday, 1 o'clock Mountain Time, I will be going live to continue that review of L. Ron Hubbard's innermost thoughts and fears and terrors and desires. And I think it sheds a great deal of clarification on who that man was and what he was trying to do. We've talked about many times, there have been papers written by non-Scientologists, academics, about the occult background or foundations of Dianetics and Scientology. Even the name Dianetics comes from Diana, the goddess, who has many iterations in history. And Hubbard, as we saw, ascribed to gods, not God. Very interesting man. At the end of the day, a very interesting man, But what he wanted is what we're doing. We still say his name. We still keep talking about him. To that degree, he is immortal. And that's wild. So, the other thing I wanted to mention today, there are many mantras. There are things people think and say often on social media or in private conversation, kitchen table conversation, as they say, about billionaires, about the class system that very much exists in the United States, just like it does in so many other parts of the world. It seems to be a way that we start sorting ourselves through history as we create these social class, socioeconomic class systems. And one thing that is said often, my wife has brought this up many times, so have I. If these very rich people won't pay us a living wage and continue to suck at the resources and money from us, how do they expect us to keep buying their products and living our lives? And it occurred to me that this is absolutely positively the wrong question, because it misunderstands what the end game or goal of our current billionaire class, in a general sense, they're not all on board with this any more than all the Republicans are on board, or all the Democrats are on board with something, or all of the people who engage in bowling are all on the same page. I mean, there's variations within these things. Okay, so when I say the billionaires or the billionaire class, don't put more there than what I'm saying. But I need to say this, and that is that the goal isn't for you to keep buying their products. It's not about money. This was the point that I kind of came to, was it's not about money as such. For that class of people, money ceased to be a problem or an issue or something they need long ago. There's a status in net worth that they vie for. So money is a means to an end to social status within that class, and influence and power certainly requires money. So again, a means to an end, but it's about the assets. And this is something Gary's economics goes on about it at length. It really should be called the asset hoarding class, not the money hoarding class, because assets are the house you live in, the apartment you rent, the building you go to work in. The company you work for can be an asset that is owned by billionaires. The car that you're leasing or buying, the mortgage you have on your house, the loan that you have for that car, the bank that you bank with and save your money in, all of these things are assets. You don't own those things, but somebody does. Who do you think that is? So when the bubble pops, so to speak, and people can't afford things anymore and have to go bankrupt and get rid of the credit debt and all of that, yes, that's a disaster waiting to happen. But when it happens, who's going to own the house you live in, the car you drive, the company you work for, the building that the company is in? Right? The people who own the assets. And if you can't afford food and you can't afford shelter and you can't afford transportation, then what's next? Indentured servitude. This is just look at history. I don't have to make this up. Just look at what we've done in the past. Our psychology and our social psychology and our social systems haven't changed that much. The feudalistic sort of system of serfdom and manor lords is pretty consistent as a system across time for, it's certainly European thinkers, which is kind of what we are, right? And so, anyway, I just thought I'd point that out, that it's not about the money, it's about the assets and about a future where, well, look up freedom cities as an example of kind of what I'm talking about. I'm not pulling this out of nowhere. There are goals and ideas and things moving forward to create a society that is very, very different from the one that we're in. And I'm not talking about the next 3 years. This is long-term stuff, right? Not hundreds of years, decades, with economic disparity having no end in sight, with global insecurity being what it is right now, the sort of, well, you know what I'm talking about, and with climate, the climate crisis hasn't gone anywhere. The temperatures are what they are, and it takes electricity and power and assets to fight it. Just thought I'd kind of throw those things out. It's a bit of a meta. It's a more meta kind of view. It's not about Republicans and Democrats. It's not about Trump. It's not about individuals. Oh, that was the other thing I wanted to say. I should probably do a whole video on this, but I got to say this today before I forget. I forget so many things. Sorry, just thinking about. Of course, right after I say that, I forget exactly what I was going to say about that. It'll come back to me. That's. Hey, baby, ADHD. It's a wonderful thing, isn't it? I hate it. Yeah, exactly. Company towns. That's it. That's exactly how to describe that. Yeah. Okay. So I'll just say all that for now. Maybe I'll do a whole nother show on some of this stuff. Yeah, I'll just put it that way. Okay, good. Let's get to your questions. You guys have been shoving a bunch in here, and there's a bunch here to get to, so let's do it. Starting with the very top here. Yes, George Smiley, what was your time at the Estates Project Force like? How did it prepare you for the abusive culture of the Sea Org? Okay, a lot of Scientology questions today, which is awesome. We're going to get right into it. So, I was on the Estates Project Force. The Estates, the Sea organization, the billion-year contract people of the Church of Scientology, right? The core fundamental fanatics that keep Scientology going. I was part of that for 17 years, and the first step of that is what's called the Estates Project Force. It's kind of a boot camp kind of operation for the paramilitary group that is the Sea Org. I was only on it for 5 days. I don't know anybody who's gotten through the EPF faster than I did. I know somebody else who did it in the same time that I did, but I don't know anybody who's gotten through it faster. I was just a speed demon. Sorry. And So I was already a very, very indoctrinated Scientologist, and the gung-ho attitude about I'm bringing it, I'm going to come here and I'm going to like kick ass and take names. That was my attitude going into the Sea Org. And so the indoctrination of the various issues and the lectures that you have to listen to, I was down. I wanted to know all of it. And so I was a very attentive studier. The work of cleaning and what we did on the EPF was grounds work, dish work, laundry stuff. I mean, not super heavy duty, not like what the RPF gets up to. So the work was not particularly something that was difficult. And I was 25 years old when I joined. So my energy level and ability to move things around and do work was significantly more than it is now at 55. Damn, 30 years ago, I joined the Sea Org. Yeah, wow. Yeah. What it prepared me for in terms of the abusive culture of the Sea Org was it sort of fertilized the ground of, for me in my mind, right, mentally sort of laid the groundwork for, this is a tough outfit, this is a rough outfit, this is a place where we get shit done. And we don't really count the cost in tears or broken people or whatever. Like if you're not, wasn't if you're not with us, you're against us. It wasn't that. It was if you're not with us, if you can't keep up, if you can't run with the pack, then we're going to leave you behind because we got a job to do and we're not interested in slackers or people who can't be here on the same terms, right? This is how the Sea Org is. Welcome to it. And I wasn't exactly keen about that attitude, but I understood it and I accepted it. And I thought, this is what's necessary to get the job done, which is a phrase that has justified more atrocities in mankind's history, which is why I bring it up. This is not a small thing, right? Once you turn that corner, where the ends justify the means as a moral foundation that you adopt, and that is exactly what I did in Scientology. That's what all Sea Org members do. That's what all cult members do. They turn the corner on their moral view of the world, where the mission or the group that they're part of or its belief system is the most senior thing you could ever be part of or have anything to do with. And so any means necessary to accomplish our goals was always very front and center. And that pretty much came home to me as a Sea Org member. I did not have that view as a staff member. There were lines in the sand. There were things I didn't want to do. There was stuff I thought was unacceptable. Going to people's houses and, me having to babysit their kids so they could get through a course was like, what am I doing? This is ridiculous. I felt, and I pushed back and got plenty of pushback back, but, I was pushing back. I was like, this is bullshit. This is not okay. Oh yeah, well, what's the solution for your stats then, Chris? If you're not going to do that, then you better figure it out, and of course I didn't have any other solutions. So there I am babysitting people's kids so they can be on course, and it doesn't sound like that big of a thing, but I wasn't getting paid. This was just free labor. There you go. Because we're servicing our public and giving it our all. So it's bad enough that there's sort of this corrosive sort of thing that's happening to your morality and to your sense of self and boundaries when you're in a cult. But to take it to the extreme level of the Sea Org, whole nother thing. I'm gonna be like I'm sick this episode. Sorry, the nose. Allergies suck. Okay. Anyway, so that's kind of how it fertilized the ground for the awful that the Sea Org presents, and indoctrinates, inculcates into you. To the point where, later in the Sea Org, we were being briefed by RTC, I think I mentioned before, on how physical abuse and beating up on each other is absolutely the order of the day if somebody's getting in your way or stopping you from doing your job. You give them a black eye, literally give them a black eye. That's what's required in order to get the job done, even within the group, much less to people outside the group. In fact, it's such a twisted logic that the Sea Org will beat each other up, but they won't. Well, yeah, no. I mean, you can't do that to the public. You can't just go give them a black eye. But then again, if they cross lines and they're a dedicated Scientologist, oh, yeah, you can. So, yeah, I was going to say they don't actually do that with the public, but no, they do worse. I mean, they'll kill them. Lisa McPherson. I mean, it's bad. So, yeah, get with the program or get out of the way. That's right. That's right. And get out of the way means get the fuck out of here, not just move. It's your out ethics, right? You're not with us. In the Sea Org, maybe I should draw back what I said before. Within the Sea Org, if you're not with us, you're against us. Yeah, actually, yeah. So, yep, that's how that is. That's what I wanted to say. Okay, let me do this real fast before I forget again. This was the point I wanted to make before, right? I've been in a cult. I've been in the Sea Organization. People tell me when I start talking about authoritarianism, proto-authoritarianism, which is kind of what we're in now. We're not in an authoritarian system yet. We're not in a fascist state yet. We're in a proto-fascist state. When you're in a fascist environment, and the Sea Org is absolutely could be described that way. It is everything that happens in the Sea Org happens at the whim and pleasure of one man, David Miscavige. Prior to him, it was L. Ron Hubbard. This is how it is. I'm not exaggerating. And when I say something like that, you all have heard tons and tons of stories. I don't think I have to convince you of that. But somehow that experience of I spent 25 years in that organization in an authoritarian environment. I have spent years describing to you, and I have thousands of videos on my channel, over 1,000 now. Well, for quite some time, I've had well over 1,000. Hell, I've got 500 episodes just answering your questions. There's a lot here. And it's not old, timed out stuff. It's here for you to take advantage of and learn all about what it is to be and live in and under the thumb of an authoritarian totalist system that controls every aspect of your life. I lived it and I escaped from it. It was this little fascist pocket right in the middle of Hollywood. And it's there right now. And no one in law enforcement or our government is lifting a finger to stop it. I've been out of that situation for 12 years. And there is not one day of that 12 years that I have not spent some amount of time learning or recovering or working on fixing myself or helping others fix themselves from the traumatizing effects of living in a totalist authoritarian system. If anybody who ever comes to my channel and watches my stuff thinks I'm exaggerating right now, then you didn't hear anything I said, because I've described it so clearly. It is an authoritarian system. I know what it looks like. I know what it feels like. I know what it smells like. So when people tell me to stay in my lane and not talk about politics because I don't know what I'm talking about, you can go fuck off. I've lived it. And I don't want you to have to live it. That's what I wanted to say. And it really disappoints when people come here to learn about cults and then hear me bash on their dear leader, whoever that is. Because I'll bash on Biden just as much as I'll bash on Trump, to be honest with you. Talk about somebody who screwed the pooch. At the end, you know, I'm really pissed about that. But I'm not bashing on the great leaders of history. You know, I'm not trying to bash on individuals just to do that. I'm trying to say that I've been there and I did that. And when I see every red flag waving high that is trying to bring that fascist thing to all of us, I'm not going to put up with anybody telling me to stay in my goddamn lane. Because you don't know what lane I'm in. You don't get it. You know, and I got some nasty comments, not just a couple, you know, in response to, you know, just putting up a live stream yesterday. We'll talk more about that, but I needed to get that off my chest. So thank you for listening. Okay. Let's get back to your questions now. Okay, Xian, did you and Melissa have fun at the No King's Day rally? What did you notice? A lot of people. And a lot of people getting it. A lot of people really understanding what's going on in various ways, at various levels, right? There's lots and lots of levels to look at what's going on. And we're not going to go into all of that stuff today, but just at least not right now. But we definitely had fun. Yes, we did. Yes, it was a good time. It was we went during the day, and somebody, you know, correctly commented that, yeah, wait till the sun goes down, right? And that's when, you know, the crazies come out on these things, and the cops have to, you know, do what they do. We had a protest earlier in the week here at Denver that had 14 people, I think, arrested for graffiti and throwing rocks at the cops and stuff. And you're just like, you know, going off onto streets where they weren't authorized to protest, because they were literally streets that people were working on and stuff. You know, those are the elements that make this bad for everybody, right? Because we have a Bill of Rights that gives us a right to go publicly protest, but we need to keep it sane and rational and peaceful. And for all the things we saw in the Civic Park and around town here yesterday, that's how it was. Everybody was very, very happy to see everybody else there coming out in support. And there were thousands and thousands of people here in Denver coming out. I mean, there was a bunch of bodies down there. So we had fun, you know, and I noticed, of course, you also notice, you know, every little group trying to pop in and be part of this, you know, and that kind of thing, and to varying degrees. But, you know, of course, we we need to find some solidarity. And I think that's, yeah, that's what I kind of saw and felt. You know, it was really hot. There was a lot of kindness. We were given some water, right? We brought our sunscreen and we brought some things, but we, you know, forgot fucking water, right? So, you know, I went to go buy some water, and there was a guy with a whole thing just handing them out, you know, and there were people on the bus on the way there. We took the bus down, and then we Ubered home, and you know, there was kindness on the bus. There was just kindness around, and that felt good. And again, that feeling of sort of solidarity, that's one reason why it's really, really good to go and do those things. And the other thing is that, as I've said before, and I'm just going to keep saying it, is showing up is the point, right? Is making your body make a statement, even if you're not talking, right? Just being there is the statement. It's important that be done, because apparently there were something like 20 million people showing up at various places around the United States yesterday to protest this. I want to say this because I've gotten some snark from those who don't get it at all as to what's going on. They're blinders on. You know, what's this No King's Day? How can you protest something that doesn't exist? There is no king. You know, why are you protesting law enforcement lawfully executing their job of kicking out illegals, right? So, you know, you're not going to convince everybody, and you don't have to. You just got to get the majority of people in this country don't want what's happening. I am absolutely positive of that. And I feel that protests like this give the undecideds or the people who have checked out an opportunity to check back in. And that's what we really need to be working on, because half of our voting population doesn't vote. They feel completely apathetic or disenfranchised and powerless. And they don't feel that way for no reason, any more than the Trumpsters felt that way for no reason. There are lots and lots of social forces and economic forces driving that long term, long before Trump came around, long before. So the feelings these people feel are perfectly valid, but we've got to get them to be involved in the process. And that's what I hope we can accomplish in the next couple of years, because that's what's necessary right now to save this whole thing. Okay, so there you go, my comments. Okay, let's carry on here. Great question. Hey Hun asks, Coca-Cola or Dr. Pepper? Tough choice, but I will go with Coke. I love Dr. Pepper, drink it all the time, but I'm much more avid Coke drinker. If you'd said Coke or Pepsi, it's absolutely hands down Coke. I don't really dig Pepsi very much, but Dr. Pepper's kind of that unique thing. I am not a fan of Mr. Pibb, Dr. Pepper knockoffs. I've tried, and I've also tried generic colas and knockoff colas, and my taste buds just keep returning to classic Coke. It's my jam. Okay. Once a Witness asks, what do you think about the Father's Day Scientology protest at Big Blue? I think go for it, go. I think that there are much more, larger, serious issues that we should be protesting, which is why I made the statements I made yesterday and today. But I'm all about, go for it. Do it peacefully, do it rationally. That's my only ask, follow Alex Barnes Ross's advice when it comes to how to do a good protest. He knows how to do it. He does it right. I am avidly in support of people protesting Scientology. I am not for faux, fake, pseudo protesting. I'm not for people who are riding their ego or riding TikTok or YouTube shorts or channels for clickbait and to just be attention hounds so that look at me. Protests are a big thing. If they're gonna work, you got to have a lot of people, and it's not an ego trip. And my biggest disappointment over the last couple of years with Scientology protests and protesters have been that it's all about them and really not about Scientology or stopping it or impeding its progress. One thing I really, really wish, and I think I said this last week on when Tony and I were talking, and something worth saying again and again is John Atack's advice on this is go. I think it's John Atack who said this, but it's go protest the whales. Go to their businesses. Go to the places they frequent. They're the ones who need to get the protesting. Scientology is immune. You're not making a dent on the Scientologists. You're seed planting, which is a long-term strategy, but the LA protesters have said over and over and over again that they don't care about getting people out of Scientology. Well, then what are you doing? Because if you think you're stopping new people from getting into Scientology by, TikToking you being an idiot in front of the Big Blue or hostilely, antagonistically confronting Scientologists, that's not going to get anywhere. That's not helpful. You know, seed planting is very, very helpful, though. You know, giving them some truth bombs, dropping some facts. If you can get in a Scientologist face, that's what you should do with them. Not yell and scream at them and make them think you're an asshole. They're not going to listen to you. So I have a lot of mixed issues with this, you know, but every effort I've made to, you know, to try to help or reach out in that direction or anything was literally just slapped back. So I gave up on any of that, you know. So those are some of my wild and random thoughts about Scientology protesting. All right, George Smiley, beyond your parents' marital problems, were there other factors that made them susceptible to Scientology? I mean, omitted education, but you know, that's pretty much everybody. I think it was pretty much just the emotional needs being fulfilled of a broken marriage that at the time, and you know, and the fact that I was around as a little baby. I mean, I was 2 years old, 3 years old when my dad was first introduced to Scientology by my uncle, my dad's brother, and I know my dad, you know, didn't get into the marriage with my mom with the idea that it was going to break up in a few years, and especially after I was born. And same with my mom. They didn't, you know, it was a ruin, as they say in Scientology. It was a big one. And so, you know, I think that was the overriding failure or sort of problem that Scientology appealed to. But I don't know if there was more. There could have been other factors. I mean, my dad, you know, comes out of a white trash family, grew up in southeast Kansas with a very, very dysfunctional family. Abusive and everything. I mean, just bad. It was bad. And he was the first person in that family, in his family line, to escape that on his own bat, go into the Navy, and then go to college. He was the one who succeeded out of that. And he was living the dream, and, you know, and met my mom while he was in the Navy. And, you know, they were married for a few years before I came around, and things were going fine. And then it all just kind of went to hell. And Scientology was the, you know, we can help you with this, right? And my mom had been raised Catholic from a very large Catholic family, the largest, you know, the oldest of 9 children. So my mom was basically a mom, you know, to her 8 siblings growing up. She was the oldest of them. And so most of the responsibilities and duties of that fell on her shoulders. And her mom, my grandma, was not a negligent mother. I'm not trying to paint that picture, but when you have 9 kids, you know what I mean, and dad drinks all the time and mom drinks all the time and they fight all the time and they're Catholics, and, you know, it was like heavy. Like my mom was a private school educated Catholic, you know, like she didn't do public school. She went to Catholic nursing school. So my point with that is she rejected Catholicism right after she got out of that whole household and situation. She was like, I ain't raising my kid like that. I don't want anything to do with that. So Scientology presented an alternative belief system that she readily accepted because she thought it gave her, the key thing for her, she's told me, was, or a key thing, was Scientology asked her for the first time the question, well, okay, so if your soul's going to heaven, where are you going? Or what about you, right? Because this idea of a soul is different from you. And somehow that question really hit my mom where it counts. And I hadn't thought about it that way before, right? So here's this new way of thinking. And in the early 1970s, remember, Scientology was an intensely spiritual, mystical, it marketed itself along those lines, fitting with the culture and times. So those things are what appealed to my parents, as far as I know, in addition to, the ruin of the marriage. And that's my understanding. That's my best answer for that's pretty much the extent of my knowledge when it comes to what it was that was appealing to them. So there you go. Young Matador, hey Chris, in your opinion, which of the various Church of Scientology entities would wield the most power in the event of a power struggle? The SO, or maybe a less well-known one that has lots of money? Oh, that's an interesting question. Well, see, it's an interesting question, but in the end, it betrays the question is not really. It's not that it's not relevant, but it's not the right question, because Scientology isn't divided up that way. If there was a power struggle, that's a power struggle in Scientology cannot happen between entities. Arguments and problems and disagreements and personnel issues, and that is kind of what happens between entities in Scientology, between applied scholastics and Scientology Missions International or something, right? And or Narconon or something, right? And then the formal church body. I mean, you can have conflicts and issues between them, but there is no power struggle. The power in Scientology is all at the top. And the various entities and units of Scientology are mostly an illusion. They're there for you to think that these different entities exist and have independence and are under their own sort of self-rule, when they are not. There is no entity in Scientology that is not subject to the whim and, operates at the pleasure of David Miscavige. Period. If he doesn't like this unit or organization, it's gone. Just like that. And there's no struggle. So there's no power struggle. It's all at the top. That's literally what an authoritarian system is. All the power rests at the top and is distributed in dribs and drabs on a limited basis to very select people for very short periods of time or for very specific purposes. That's how it's divided. So Miscavige is the one who holds all the cards, and he doesn't share with anyone. He dribs and drabs little bits of power to people for short periods of time if he needs them to go do something, or he needs them for some purpose. But then he takes it right back. And this is, of course, him solving the dictator problem of, you can't give too much power to your rivals or your inner circle, because then they'll do what you did. This is the problem, especially of the second in command, the second in charge, not the deputies. I mean, the first person to take over from the founder. The founder may or may not be paranoid about their inner circle taking over, and they may or may not have justification for that. But the second guy universally will, because how do you think the second guy came into power, right? He usually had to wrest it from someone else, or there was a power struggle, right? And that was all back in the 80s when Miscavige took things over and made himself dictator, right? Basically did the Napoleon drill of grabbing the crown and putting it on himself. So he knows how that happens, and he is absolutely not going to let anybody do that to him. And he's in a position now where nobody's going to really do that to him, or can. At least not yet. At least not now. Things can always change. But right now, he's got all the power and then holds the reins. And he uses a divide and conquer strategy to, as most authoritarians do, to only give information is siloed and power is siloed. So that's a more accurate representation of how Scientology operates. If David Miscavige disappears tomorrow, the Sea Org as an entity or unit is what's going to be in charge of Scientology, and whoever within the Sea Org rises up, that's that. The Church of Scientology International is managed and run by the Sea Org. The Church of Spiritual Technology, CST, is managed and run by Sea Org members. And Author Services Incorporated, which is Hubbard's literary agent and the third of the triad of major organizations that run this thing, Sea Org, right? It's all Sea Org members. So there is nobody to struggle with in terms of the Sea Org. The Sea Org has all the keys, has all the power, has all the money. And so, it's not like some local city level church is going to stand up to that, or even as a united front, all of the churches of Scientology, the Denver and Milano to New York to Los Angeles. Well, not Los Angeles, because that's a Sea Org outfit. But, the non-Sea Org churches don't have anything to be able to push back against the top. There is no means by which they could do so. Their bank accounts could be emptied just like that by the Sea Org, not the other way around, right? So that's more the situation there. And I hope that clarifies what I was saying, young Matador, about why the question's not really, it's a fine question, but I hope my answer has demonstrated why that's not the scenario that's going to happen anytime, certainly not anytime soon. Okay. Let me pop this, make this just a little bit bigger so I can read this a little easier. Okay, so Bo Beats, Black Sheep. Do you think the unrest, quote unquote, of the ICE protests will spill over, affect the Scientology protest on L. Ron Hubbard Way today? I doubt it. I don't know how close by ICE protests are happening to the complex, to Big Blue. So it could, right? I mean, the base certainly could have trouble. The base is set up to protect itself. The security force on the base take their jobs very seriously, and they can deputize all the males on the base, all the men, and they will. They've done it before during the LA riots. That happened, where they can arm them. They can put them in places to protect the buildings, protect the property, and they will absolutely do so. The church is not going to just roll over and let people come vandalize their properties or something like that. They will absolutely fight and defend those properties. I would not be the person who would want to go make trouble with Scientology that way, right? Unless you had an overwhelming force to go, cause some trouble on that base. They take their property and the defense of their property very seriously. Now, this is me speaking as of my experience in the Sea Org, right? It's been 12 years. Maybe the Sea Org is just full of a bunch of pansies now, but I don't think so. Not when it comes to stuff like that. And they feel when it comes to defense of self and property, they are locked in. So could it disrupt their operations if, ICE protesters kind of started going wacko around the base? Sure, it could, right? If they cut off the streets or something, people couldn't get to the base. Sure, there could be those kind of issues, but those are short-term things, right? That's not a big deal. All right. Wants to witness Vernon. Is it possible to become friends with Sea Org members at Big Blue? No, it is not. Or do they see me as just a wog not to be trusted? Yeah, no, that's absolutely the case. They will act very, very... I think some of you have heard of Minnesota Nice. I'm reminded of that right now, thinking about this. Because... you know, in Minnesota, the people there are super, super nice to strangers or to people around who aren't Minnesotans. And they're nice, but this, as the saying goes, they'll give you directions to anywhere except their house. You know, they're not going to be friends with you. If you don't grow up with people in Minnesota, that you're out, you're iced. You know, you're not part of their clan or part of their circle. You have to work and work and work to become accepted in those communities or families. And I had first-hand experience of that. So the Sea Org, and I bring all that up because it's the first thing that came to mind with Sea Org members. It's like, yeah, they'll be nice to you. You know, if you're nice to them, you're inquiring about Scientology, or you want to be friendly with them or whatever, they'll be friendly, but they're never going to trust you. They're never going to really become friends with you, not in any sort of real way. Even PR people and folks who have to work with government officials or civic leaders or work in the communities, they'll get friendly with people who aren't in the Sea Org, but there's always a line. And maybe you will not see it. Maybe you won't feel it because they're really good at projecting friendliness, especially the PR people. But they're never going to be your friend. No, that's impossible, right? And in fact, there's actually Sea Org written issues, not L. Ron Hubbard written issues, but Sea Org written issues that straight up tell them you're not going to have connections or tight bonds with anybody outside the Sea Org. That is called an external influence. Oh, you are externally influenced. If your mother or father or brother or sister are sending you gifts, you're externally influenced. If they send you Christmas cards, to some degree, you're externally influenced, right? Because that family, you know, they got ties to you that, you know, are distracting you from the mission. And if you're distracted, if there's other intentionness, as they say, that's out ethics. Yeah. The group is all and the individual is nothing. That is the Sea Org. All right. Exion, do you know where Lake Gramby is and have you ever camped there? No. A friend I know that lives in Loveland did a few days ago and really enjoyed it. Hey, that's awesome. That's awesome. I'm not a camper. I don't like the great outdoors. Not my thing. I'm an indoor city guy. Always have been. I did the Boy Scouts. I did a lot of camping. I froze my ass off in the snow one night in a cotton sleeping bag when I was like 11 or 12 or something. I mean, you know, the Boy Scouts was a rough go. I didn't see any of the nasty crap that happens in some Sea Org or some Boy Scout things. I didn't have any of that. I just had a rough time because I'm not an outdoorsy person. So, just being honest with you, right? I don't camp. So, Lake Granby might be a perfect, wonderful place to visit, but I wouldn't camp there. Okay, Joe DiCeppo, congratulations on 500th show last week. Thank you very much. How was the protest you attended in Denver? As mentioned, it went really well. I had a good time, and I'm very, very glad I went. And next week and next Saturday, Mel and I are going to be driving up north to Johnstown, which is near Greeley, about an hour north of us, and we're going to be attending a meeting that Gabe Evans is our local representative in the House at the federal level. And he was the deciding vote on the big, beautiful bill passing to go to the Senate. He is a full-blown Trumpster. And I have things to say to him, and I hope he shows up to the town hall that he has been invited to next week, which we're going to be going to. So I'm going to carry on with those kind of activities. Because and I'll just say, as I've said many, many times, if you were waiting for something to stand up and make yourself be noticed, I really hope you stop waiting, because we don't have a lot of time. So I hope you'll take advantage. And by that, I mean we have years, but we don't have decades. It's crunch time. It's time to raise your voice and talk. And if you have something you believe in, you should stand up for it. I lived a lot of years of my life at the receiving end of a lot of abuse, beatings, and a kind of torture and trafficking. I was trafficked because I didn't know enough to stand up for myself. So now that I do, I'm never going back. Ever. I'm not going back to that way of life. And I don't want that for you. Right? Just going to keep saying that. All right. Bo Beats Black Sheep, what is your take on all the disturbing art at the Denver airport? Oh my God, right? Right? Oh my God. I still, to this day, cannot get over Blucifer. I just can't. There is this big blue horse with red eyes, this big, huge statue, which, by the way, killed the guy who made it. It fell on him. The dude who made this thing. And it sits outside the Denver airport. And Denver is a weird place. The Denver airport is just weird. I don't have a better word for it. It is a little disturbing. And they kind of build on that, I guess. There have been so many renovations down at the airport, and it's a weird place. I just wish I had. It's a perfectly fine airport. I've never had a problem with it as an airport. It's the scenery, right? It's the stuff they do there. It's just. There have been old conspiracy theories apparently about how underneath DIA, because Denver is centrally located geographically in the United States, there has been this long-term conspiracy theory that DIA was built on some kind of tunnel elaborate complex that rich people will come to or something, because you can all fly to Denver, right, as a central location, and hide out there or something, or live there, or be there or something, or run the government from there or something. I don't know where this crap comes from, but DIA has a sort of oddball reputation because of that. And I've talked to other people here in Denver, and they're like, yeah, it's weird. I have no idea where that comes from or why, but there you go. Yeah. Thanks for asking. Xian, did you ever meet Diana Hubbard? I did. Once she came down to the base at Big Blue PAC, and she what was she there for? It was an event. There was an event of some kind. And so I only really saw her. I think I spoke with her once. I think I brought something to her. She was in the basement of the CLO building where I worked, and she was typing up some kind of report or debrief or something of some event she had done. And she was in a Class A uniform, full naval rank and all the stuff and the bars and all that. And she had this really long, flowing red hair, and she definitely was L. Ron Hubbard's daughter. And I had nothing but, Diana Hubbard, like I didn't know what to say or even where to begin in talking to her. And I wasn't in a place where I was going to be talking to her. I was a continental level, middle manager, right? I had no business with her. So it was just kind of let her, don't bother her, was sort of the attitude. And it wasn't because she was Diana Hubbard. It was because she was an international executive of the Sea Org, right? She was I think at the time that she came down, she was Div 6 internal executive int, right? Div 6 IEI, as we would say, D6 IEI. And that put her on the International Management Executive Committee, working with I think it was 11 or 12 other Sea Org members who were responsible for, these various functions in Scientology. David Miscavige has long since dismantled all of that. None of that exists anymore. It may be in name, but it doesn't exist functionally in any way. All of Scientology management is now absolutely at the dictatorial control of David Miscavige. Diana Hubbard's, is irrelevant in the picture of current Scientology. But that was my meeting with her. So yeah, not much, no stories really, just that. Seemed like a nice lady, at least. But all the int execs who came down to the continental level were nice. They you know, unless I'm talking about Jenny DeVach and when they were on their ethics mission, then they were fucking unbelievable, unbelievable. They were evil, and they were laughing about it. It was gross how bad those people were. But outside of that awful experience of the summer of '96, the PAC ethics mission summer of hell, that was the second hardest time I had in the Sea Org was that. The RPF was the hardest thing, but that summer of 1996 was fucking awful. And Jenny DeVach was absolutely the one in charge of that. Jenny Linson, I think it is now, right? Because she's not married to Tom DeVach anymore, because Tom's out. This was Tom DeVach's wife in the Sea Org. She was fucking bitch, man. There's just no other word for what that woman was about. She was evil. And I'm told she's really, really nice. I don't believe it. Not my experience of her. No way, right? She was the worst. Anyway, and the reason I say that is because just to counter it with a Diana Hubbard, right? Diana wasn't like this at all. And the other int execs who would come down were not like this. But she took pleasure in hurting people. She was channeling Miscavige. And, you know, for whatever reason, that's what that was about. So there was a little compare and contrast for you, I guess. All right. Let's see here. Doobie-doobie-doo. WASF, what do you think about eating less meat or veganism for human health and the environment? As I understand it, the carbon emissions of the millions of animals that we raise for the purposes of food consumption has an effect on our environment. I think that's kind of sad, or kind of sucks a little bit. I love steak. I love meat. I'm not gonna ever really stop eating it, that I can tell. I don't believe that non-meat substitutes scale in terms of production to be able to actually be a substitute on a large scale, but I may not know what I'm talking about when I say stuff like that. And I am positive that there's a ton of people who are convinced that just because I said I'm not going to stop eating meat, that I'm an absolute monster. So I know that there are very, very extreme views on this. And I'm not in a place where I know all the facts regarding vegan versus, meat and the environment, beyond what I just said about the carbon output of, all those farm animals. I know that we have the means to feed people better than we ever had before with meat substitutes or with non-meat products. But I also know that some concepts of vegan diets and veganism are unhealthy, right? That they will create situations where you're not getting enough proteins or not getting enough nutrition. But again, my expertise on that is non-existent, right? I only know very, very, very few facts about that stuff. So I try not to make, any kind of like absolute statements about it one way or the other. And there you go. Okay, once a witness. When LRH was single, did he ever date non-white women? Not that I know of. I've never heard of L. Ron Hubbard dating interracially. I think he was pretty exclusively, Caucasians. Yeah. Vladimir Putin's asking me, who does military parades better, my originals or Trump's cheap copy? Right? Yeah, I heard that parade yesterday was quite I heard it tanked. Hey, I could make myself laugh. Yeah, it's, it's one of those red flags for me. Because getting a loyal military that will become part of your cult of personality is a necessary element to turning proto-authoritarianism into authoritarianism. Trump doesn't have the ability to do that, I believe. But I am very disturbed about how quickly ICE has lined up to violate the Bill of Rights on a daily basis and throw due process out the window. I'm disturbed by that. And that's a stepping stone to, you know, a military that will swear fealty to a dictator rather than to the country or the Constitution. We're, like I said, we're not there tomorrow or the next day or next month or next year. This is a process. And it's a grinding process, and not one that Trumpism is going to accomplish, I don't believe. When I talk about waving those red flags around, you know, the red flags have been flying to one degree or another in various ways for quite some time. Again, it's not Trumpism that's the problem. It's those social and economic forces that are driving us, and our reactions to those events and forces that drive us towards embracing authoritarianism. It's us that are doing that. We can blame the great leaders of history, but it's us responding to those environmental things that bring that about. Anyway, that's what your question made me think about, so I had to go there. But I love the question. Yeah. Okay. Sam Slade. Sorry, I got stuff on my mind today, guys. It's just where my head's at. Sam Slade, 1, what is the current relationship between Scientology and the Nation of Islam? Oh, good question. Have you or Tony Ortega heard of anything regarding this? And 2, do you think the FP rundown, false purpose rundown, can cause psychosis? Okay, great questions. Great questions. I have not heard much about Nation of Islam as a thing with Scientology in a couple of years now. I'm aware that there are still active members in Scientology going up Scientology's bridge who are NOI. Absolutely, that is the case. But you don't see Farrakhan or the other NOI leadership speaking at Scientology events or being featured in any way. So maybe there's been a kind of break, but nothing spectacular, nothing incendiary, right? No public statements made. So don't know, but I haven't really heard much about that at all. Right? All I see are promo materials out of Flag, Service Org, or sometimes some of the city level churches, which will feature NOI members, right? Clearly, obviously, because they dress and they act and they do things that are very, very clearly NOI. So that's what I can say about that. It's a good question, though. You got to wonder, did something happen, or was it just sort of a marriage of convenience for a little while and then they just drifted apart? Who knows? Or maybe it's stronger than ever, but we're just not seeing a lot of it because the fad of talking about it is past and now they're just kind of enfolded into it. Or, it would be an interesting thing to find out a lot more about that, but I'm really not sure how to. Short of somebody coming out and telling us all about it, right? Which is how we tend to find out about what's going on in the church, because they're not exactly transparent. Now, as far as the false purpose rundown causing psychosis, okay. Let's take a look at something here. If we look at the definition of psychosis, what is it? Disconnected from reality, a mental condition characterized by loss of contact with reality, often involving hallucinations or delusions. It may involve seeing, hearing, or believing things that are not real, and it can happen due to various reasons, such as mental illness, substance use, or extreme stress. Psychosis can include symptoms like hallucinations, which are perceptions of things that do not exist, and delusions, which are strong beliefs that are not based in reality. Now, strictly speaking, psychosis tends to be used, I think we all think that that's a word that is a heavy duty condition. But if we take the definition here and we look at psychopathology, where psychosis is a condition in which a person is unable to distinguish in their experience of life between what is and is not real. The false purpose rundown, by necessity, requires that you go whole track in your memories. You have to go to earlier than this lifetime incidents for the false purpose rundown to be meaningful. You're addressing not only bad things you've done, sins you've committed, you're taking it back and back and back in time to your past lives and times that you committed sins then of a similar nature to what you did this time around. Stealing money, hurting somebody, abusing people, whatever it is. Whatever the nature of the sin is, you can trace it back in time to your past lives. And you take it back, back, back as far as you can. Whether you're an OT or a clear or a pre-clear on the grade chart, if you're getting false purpose rundown, you have got to go whole track, as they say. Got to go into the past lives. Hubbard makes it crystal clear in the references on this that it is a whole track matter to get to the heart of the sin, which is the evil purpose or destructive intention that is prompting or motivating you to commit the overt, the sin. There's some decision you made thetanically, love that word, as a thetan, way, way back. After you, which prompted you, that decision that you made, or that postulate, or that intention that you adopted, motivates you to do really, really bad things. And that is always, Hubbard says, a whole track matter. You did not make any such decision this lifetime. Hubbard says the stuff we run into on planet Earth, this lifetime stuff, is tame, is nothing, is minuscule compared to the shit that you've experienced way, way back in the past. That's the past. I always point that way, right? And that's the future. So that's why you have to go past life. Now, I stress all that because you read this definition. So in Scientology, you get your false purpose rundown auditing, and I had over 1,000 hours of it, by the way, so I definitely know what I'm talking about when it comes to false purpose rundown. It's the bulk of what you get on the RPF, which I spent 3 years doing. So I had a whole lot of experience with this FPRD. And to say that you come away from that with delusional ideas about your existence and identity is the understatement of the century. You come to believe through the process of doing the FPRD that you have not only lived, this near infinite amount of time in the past, but you come to believe that you blew up planets. I mean, I had whole stories, man. I had memories of things that I was just making shit up left, right, and center. And I believed it. I was conditioned in Scientology to believe that if I remembered it or thought it, it was true. So I think I've even told you all some of the stories over time, right? Blowing up planets. I had a story of an overt I committed one time 36 million years ago, where I was part of an invasion force, and from orbit we were able to launch these missiles, these weapons down to a planet and wipe out their oxygen. And so, all the stuff, the buildings and everything were left intact, and everybody was gone, right? Everybody was dead. right? Because we could just wipe out their oxygen, and then we had the technology to, give them more after everybody was dead, right? I just made this shit up. I mean, this is sci-fi story stuff, but I believed I actually did that. Was I delusional? Was that a form of psychosis? Certainly seems to be to me. Was I running around, throwing my feces at the wall? No, I wasn't a raving lunatic. But I believe, we can look at psychosis as a spectrum or a graduated scale. So to some degree, I was walking around with fully delusional ideas about myself, my identity, and my past. So I think, as I've explained it here, yeah, I think that it can cause psychosis, and I think it's actually a necessary result of Scientology auditing that a person become somewhat delusional, and it's a strong ass word, but maybe a little bit psychotic, a little bit not touching reality, not violent. You notice that in the definition that I read to you guys, violence isn't part of psychosis. So I wasn't a violent psychotic. I wasn't a violent, delusory person. I didn't want to hurt or abuse other people because of my delusions. But was I delusional? Fuck yes, I was. I don't see any harm in owning that. Am I delusional now? Not about that. And this is maybe where, my clinician education and lack of education might, hit a wall, because I'm not sure in a professional sense at what point do you draw the line exactly of, oddball beliefs that a person has and clinical delusion, right? I'm not sure. I'm not in a position where I could dictate that right now. I haven't really gone deep on, forensic psychology or, that kind of analysis of those conditions. So that's what I can tell you about that. Hope that helps. All right. X-Cyan. Do you have hope? Please share so I can have some too. Yeah, of course I do. Absolutely I do. Let me be clear. Because sometimes I get on a roll about things and where they're going, and it can sound hopeless. And I don't want to get, it would be a fallacy and an error and a huge, huge mistake on my part if that was what I left you with. The machinery of our democratic society and process, as we like to describe it, has a lot of rust in the spokes. There's been a lot of corrosive acid thrown on the machinery of our systems. And it's been happening since the beginning of our systems beginning. Every government system, every culture and society that has ever existed on planet Earth has a time limit. It reaches an end, and the end is not always great, right? It's not like everybody goes, hey, this has been fun. Let's move over to an even more productive thing, right? It usually, we have this thing we've talked about called anacyclosis. It's a older historical sort of modeling that I kind of like. But it doesn't necessarily explain everything. But the point of it, the core point of it, is that there are cycles that we go through. And that is rock solid as far as I can tell. My view of history and knowledge of it is crystal clear that governments rise and governments fall. Governments rise and governments fall. I don't think this is controversial. And the means of its destruction is kind of always built into it, and built into our psychology, and built into our social systems and our economic systems. This is kind of similar in a way to conceptually what Karl Marx was going on about. But Marx missed the boat on a lot of things because the whole concept and field of social psychology didn't even exist when he was writing, his work. So, and he was not a social psychologist, right? So I think that, nor was he, a great historian particularly, or a lot of other things, right? But the point is not, hey, Marx got it all right. The point is that conceptually, there is a concept that has been said over and over again in history by historians and political philosophers and people who study this stuff, that governments rise and governments fall, and there's a pattern to it, and there's a reason to it, and there are signs and red flags and green flags, right, that fly, that indicate certain trends, certain tendencies. This is really where it goes down to, is trends and tendencies, not exact actions. You can't pinpoint exact things and predict, well, he's going to do this or she's going to say this. It's more general than that. These trends and tendencies go in certain directions. They can be changed. Events are random, and random events change things in interesting ways. So not all events are random, but when volcanoes going off. I mean, check out what happened when Krakatoa went off, or what was that other one? There was that big, huge one in the 1800s that blacked out Europe. I mean, the volcano was over in Southeast Asia, I think. My wife knows all about this stuff. She loves volcano stuff. I only pay periphery attention to it. But the point is that, it's not all predetermined. It's not all hopeless, because people are creative and originative and do things, and they do them individually and they do them together, that can change the course of things. So you never, ever should be hopeless. You never should. Sometimes it's not clear why you should have hope, and those are the times that you should actively, very proactively, go find it, because it's all around us all the time. But you won't find it in our major news media anymore, because that's not what they're about. They don't exist to give you hope. They exist to rile up your anxieties, so that you'll pay more attention to them, so that your face will be glued to the screen. That's the model of modern media. That's us. That's the model of the internet age, and the way the internet has been taken by the worst people to serve slop to the most people for the most amount of time. So you won't find hope there necessarily. You got to go out in the world. You got to talk to people. You got to interact and relate, not just with your neighbors or something. Maybe you hate your neighbor. I don't care. I mean, whatever. Your family, your friends, whoever. People you can find common cause with. That's your best source of hope. And positive news of an informative nature about science advancements. There are channels on YouTube that are just nothing but good news. You got to look them up, though. They're never, ever suggested to you on the front page of YouTube, right? Because that's not what YouTube is about. It's not about giving you hope, right? It's about keeping your eyes glued to the screen. So you have to be cognizant and media literacy aware enough to bypass their bullshit and not fall for their traps, and find the things that are going to give you the hope that you need. And there's lots and lots of reasons to have that. Democratic decline is a very, very real thing, that we are just kind of in the window of time when that's happening. And we can slow it down, and we can make things better for people, but we gotta jump through some hoops and solve certain problems. And we need our leadership to step up and be leaders. For the first time this last week, just a couple days ago, and I know some of you don't like this guy, and I don't know, I don't care. Bernie Sanders put out a video where he talked turkey about, he just said the straight, here's what it is, right? He gave the straight skinny on where we stand right now. And it was a very, very good video. It was a near perfect kind of form of messaging from a politician, as opposed to, say, the bullshit video Tulsi Gabbard put out last week about nuclear war, right? That was pure propaganda. She even had music playing in the background. I mean, politicians should not be presenting anything to you with music playing in the background. I'm telling you, you see that, recognize immediately you are being propagandized. You are not being informed. Just forget it, right? Because there's just no other reason to be playing music in the background except emotional manipulation. And politicians' jobs is not to emotionally manipulate you, even if you're so jaded with politics that you think that's all you see. It's not all you see, and it's not all that's out there. You know, don't let confirmation bias rule your mind. Look, make yourself informed, because our sources of information are compromised. That's a problem. It's one of the red flags of the march toward, you know, proto-authoritarianism and ultimately authoritarianism, right? So, so we've, you know, we want to push back against that. It's not like these systems exist because we want them to be that way. These systems of media, you know, not informing us, or the internet being such an awful place. Psychotic people made it that way. Mark Zuckerberg is a nut. He's absolutely inhuman. Right? The guy has no concept of what it is to be a human being. And he created the most popular social media platform on the planet. One of the most unsocial, inhuman people ever. You really believe that? No, of course not, right? Of course he made a platform everybody's connected to, but it's not social media. It's anti-social media. Get the hell off of there. I have never once looked back on when I left Facebook and went, oh, God, I really miss it. I do not, right? It's given me more hope in life and in my relationships to get away from the anti-social media. You don't need it to stay in touch with people. Believe it or not, we actually used to talk to each other and call each other and write letters to each other before there was an internet. We were really good at it. And we were a lot less riled up and anxious and traumatized at those times, and that did have something to do with it, right? So you can shed yourself of some of the hopeless inducing, anxiety minded things in our society, and you can still have a life. You can't unplug completely, of course, because our lives are kind of run on the internet, and so you can manage your life, but you don't have to manage your social life or think that the internet is the only place or the only medium for information and or for connection, right? So those are some things I can say that I think are important. The other thing is that I'll say is there is a great deal of, I have found a great deal of rationality returning to my life and my thinking when I stop taking sides in everything. Now, pretty clearly, I have a side that I have taken in terms of where our country is going. But even there, right, while no Trumpster will ever listen to me, and I've sort of abandoned hope that they will, they're not my audience, and they're not listening to anything I said, ever, about anything. So it's not, the messaging of this channel has never been about cults. It's been about us and how we get along, right? That's where I'm coming from. And so cults are just the most extreme way that we don't get along, or that we get along too well, and we're in a super conformity environment where disagreement is just not on the table. Either end of that is awful, right? We want to be more diverse and have a variety of ideas in the marketplace of ideas and all of that. That's the antithesis and antidote to cultic thinking. So I recognize that I am, that I do have a side. It's the one of, let's not hurt people and abuse them, and let's not violate our laws in the name of enforcing our laws. Let's give our rights to people, not take them away and say we're making their lives better, right? That's the side I'm on. It's a more, let's get above the red versus blue of this. you know? That has given me a lot more clarity. You know, something I said the other day to someone was, that I thought was kind of clever, was, you know, if you're going to take a historical view of things, and I really recommend doing so because it really provides a lot of clarity, you only take sides when you stop at a certain point in time and say, okay, only this much history matters, and I'm going to ignore everything that came before. Because if you do that, then it's easy to take sides. But if you take the whole picture, you start seeing all the various levels of cause and effect. And it's not about this side versus this side so much. You know? So much. Obviously, there are times when sides needed to be taken. World War II. World War I, I don't know about. Not so sure that that was a necessary thing. I think World War I was a clusterfuck of stupidity. World War II was also a clusterfuck of stupidity, but it was against certain individuals who had risen to positions of power with machines operating under them that had literal global domination in mind. You know, both in Japan and in Germany and in Italy with the Axis and all that. There's a point where talk ends and you got to put down the rabid dog, so to speak. But we're not there right now. We are so far from that right now. We're not there. There's lots of reasons there's lots of ways this train can be, you know, this ship can be turned, right? And that's what I got. Yeah, that's what I got on that. Okay, enough going on and on. Noam saying, were any SO members punished for doodling, caught sketching things on paper during work time? Well, that's a very interestingly specific question. I'm not sure. I don't recall anything like that happening in my vicinity when I was in the Sea Org. I got busted for playing Minesweeper on my computer one time, but that's not doodling. Yeah. Okay, John asks, how do you audit OT7? Well, I've read a lot of the materials, but I did not audit on OT7. It is a solo process where you go into a room with an e-meter and you have the paper and the pens and the commands and everything you're going to do. And you're running the session on yourself. So you're holding two cans, which are connected together with a little bit of plastic in between to keep them separated. And they're in one hand in your palm. And that's what establishes the electric circuit. So you can run the e-meter. And you adjust the e-meter dial and everything. You get trained in how to do all this. This is how you do solo auditing. And OT7 is done solo. You're supposed to go in session at least once every single day, but they prefer twice, 3, 4, 5 times. OT7 sessions are short. They can be, it can take longer to set up the session than it does to actually do the session. So the OT7s tend to have a space in their house where they set up a meter and their stuff, and they keep it locked. And that's kind of their OT7 room, right? And the materials have to be kept locked up when they're not in there. And there's a whole checklist for securing your home auditing space. And they have to show literally photographic compliance of that before they'll be allowed to start auditing at home. The procedures are multiple. There are different ways of addressing the body thetans that you're exorcising, that you're getting rid of, one by one, in the session. The one way that I'm aware of is that you will ask yourself about some kind of a, the meter is responding to some kind of a problem or issue or person in your life who is giving you a hard time, or some problem you have, or some issue you have. And you will ask yourself, or you will find out which body thetan represents that problem or issue or person or whatever. And you will then find that thetan by, again, you're watching the needle on the meter and following this procedure, and you then contact that body thetan, that one individual one, and you sort of rehabilitate it through a series of commands or a procedure you follow to wake it up, or get it to get your attention and rehab it. And you can even end up, I think, in some way, they said you can audit, the grades on it. I don't know how that's accomplished. That boggles me. But you have to do this whole process with the body thetan that the meter is telling you is registering, that represents this problem, issue, concern you have. And once you've let it go, that problem or issue or concern should be vanished from your life, right? You shouldn't have that anymore, or something like that. This is what I can say off the top of my head about auditing on OT7, again, because I didn't do it. And so I don't have as much detail to give you on that as, say, I can talk to you very intelligently about the false purpose rundown, because I got 1,000 hours of that bullshit. I could audit, I could tell you about the grades, I could tell you about, a lot of the lower level stuff, because I just did, hundreds of hours of that crap. But the OT levels, I have to speak in a bit more general terms, unless I start pulling up a bunch of bulletins, and I don't think we want to go there in the middle of all this. So, all right, there you go. Xcion asks, is there an allergy rundown? Yes, there is. Oh boy, and it's so workable, right? No, I never got one when I was in Scientology, but there is a rundown called the Allergy Asthma Rundown, which is a list of things that are assessed on the e-meter for the longest, biggest reactions, and then you take those items which have to do with asthma and allergy conditions, and you do a series of commands and processes. You can run recall processes where you're just remembering times you had the allergy or whatever it is that's being asked of you. Or you could run it with Dianetics, where you do this NED, New Era Dianetics procedure, which is a way of basically taking a great big mental eraser and going in and just erasing that shit out of your mind, right? Where it's no longer going to be in your reactive mind, and all of the causes of the allergy or the asthma are supposedly addressed and dealt with. David Miscavige had asthma coming into Scientology, and he may have had something like this process in order to get rid of his allergy, or his asthma rather. I don't think it worked, actually. How weird. But I think he thought it worked for a while, something like that. Okay. The carrot that Lukashenko gave to Siegel. Okay. What would you say to, or how would you help someone who has left a cult 20 years ago but still holds many of the beliefs? Oh, okay. I would probably address them with street epistemology, if they were like somebody I knew or somebody I could sit down with or talk to. And I wouldn't address them in any kind of an idea that I'm going to do a one and done, right? It's not going to be one time. But street epistemology is simply a way of inquiring to a person about their beliefs, the certainty with which they have in those beliefs, and why. Why do you believe that is true? What's your reasoning? Explain the reasoning behind this, right? And then questioning that reasoning. Not challenging it in a hostile manner, not telling them they're full of shit, but questioning them in a truly curious way. The way it works best is if you are really, truly curious about what this person thinks and why. So, you've got a cult belief from 20 years ago that you're still holding on to. Well, I know plenty of people who are like that. And if I was determined to change their mind for some reason, and I don't know that I would be compelled to do so, right? I mean, for example, my father still holds all kinds of Scientology beliefs, and you know, that man's over 80 years old and not harming anybody with that. He's the last person I'm going to try to do this with, and especially over the phone, for Christ's sake, right? I mean, street epistemology is something that you really want to do with someone in person. If the means of your communication is social media or phone or Zoom calls or something, just forget it, right? Just do some seed planting if you can. Ask some questions if you can, but don't think you're going to get deep into some really heavy conversation with them about, extremity of belief or deep-seated beliefs through those mediums, right? The social media is not built for that and doesn't work for that at all. Just don't do it. But if you can get them in person where you can actually have a real conversation and they can let their defenses down a little bit and you can actually get in there. Like I said, remember that old analogy about a thought fortress, right? The deeply held beliefs that we have are held within stone, solid rocks, titanium walls in our minds. And nothing you say or do is ever going to break down those walls. You've got to know that about people. You must. This is a very important thing to know. You cannot break down those walls. You can torture people to their death, and they will not break down those walls. They'll take it to the grave. The way you address beliefs that are inside a thought fortress is you have got to get the person to open the door and let you in. That's the way in. And once you're in, they'll kick your ass right out of there if you start attacking them or acting in a hostile way towards them, because they let an enemy in the gates, right? And they're going to let you right back out. So you can't be adversarial in that sense when you're addressing beliefs, whether it's from a cult from a year ago or from 20 years ago. Just please trust me on this one, right? This is really rock solid information. So you get invited in through questions, through trust, through compassion, right? You got to care about the person. And they have to trust you, right? That you're not going to hurt them or take their beliefs and spin them and make fun of them or ridicule them. Don't do that. Not if you're serious about changing them. And then you're going to have to also ask yourself whether it's really your place to do that, to change this person's life and beliefs and ideas and identity. Because remember, when you're talking about deep-seated beliefs, you're talking about core identity issues now. You're not talking about some idea that sits out here that has nothing to do with them. It's this is in my heart, man. This is all in my soul. This is what I believe to my core. You're gonna deal with that? It's gonna take a little time. And they've got to trust you. So be trustworthy, right? That's an attitude really more than anything else, but it's an important part of an answer like this. And your tools are the truth, facts. Once you're in, then they'll listen to your facts. If you're talking to somebody and you're dumping some truth bombs on them and all they're doing is arguing with you, you're not in. You're not inside the walls yet. As a point, right? So get in there if you can, and then talk about why is this important to you? What is the belief? Because oftentimes we will have from outside a weird or different idea from what the belief actually is. And sometimes people are not good at articulating their or describing their beliefs. So they'll say things to you and you go, well, that's weird, but it's not really exactly what the belief is. It's only the words they could find to express it in the moment. So getting in there, gives you a chance to really explore it. Tell me all about it. I want to understand it the same way or at the same level you do. Oh, well, let me tell you, because John 13:6 says this, and, maybe it's a religious belief and it's based on biblical stuff, or maybe it's based on, the stuff out of the Quran, or maybe it's based out of some Buddhist teachings, or maybe it's some corporate speak landmark bullshit, or Scientology, or NXIVM crap, or whatever it is. It's a set of ideas and concepts that they hold dear. So tell me all about it. I want to understand what this belief is for you, and then I want to understand what it does for you. Why is this important to you? Why is it important you believe this? What emotional needs does this fulfill for you? They'll tell you, or they'll describe it to you if you're in, right? And then you can start, oh, okay, I get it. Did you ever, okay, but what about, and then you can start asking your questions. What about this? What about this? What but did you ever, could it be this, have you ever considered maybe it could be this other way? I'm just asking. It's not even it's not even you're a fucking idiot. It's just, have you ever thought about it a different way? Would you ever think about it a different way? And you will find some people who will be unwilling to think about it a different way. And maybe that's as far as you can get, and you can't change it. But if you can, that's how you're going to do it. That's the path. It's going to be individual for each single person you talk to, because trust and tolerance and compassion are different from person to person to person, aren't they? So how you get them to invite you into their thought fortress is half the battle. And then once you're there, not screwing it up is the other half. I think I'm making it sound a lot harder than it actually is. But the attitude is really key to it. And I think that's why I'm harping on that part of it more than I'm harping on, well, there's these logical fallacies, see, and you got to know all these, see. No, you don't. It helps you enormously if you do, to spot where their logic might be falling down. But if you start unloading on them, oh, that's just confirmation bias. Oh, that's just normalcy fallacy. If you start throwing it at it like that, you can forget it, man. You're getting kicked right out of there. So, you see what I mean? All right. Anyway, so there you go. That's what I got for you on that. Hope that helps. I really do. Quite honestly, I think that's the most important question I've answered so far today. So I hope that was a good answer. Okay, the entire country of Luxembourg is asking me if I suffer from hay fever. Maybe. I certainly suffer from something. Let's see here. Hay fever. Yeah. Yes, it's hay fever. Yep, that's exactly what it is. Yeah. Okay, good. Mike Lindell, pillow, waifu, Iran or Israel feels like Alien versus Predator. Humanity loses either way. Okay, thank you. This is what I was talking about earlier when I was talking about how if you're going to choose sides, you have to go back and stop thinking about history at a certain point, right? And that's not the way to do this. A meta view, a larger, 10 feet back kind of view is the way to think about things, especially when it comes to conflict between countries that aren't even our countries. I mean, I've never even been to Iran or Israel. They're on the other side of the world. They have very little to do with me compared to what's going on domestically here. So it puzzles me that people feel compelled to have to take sides in conflicts that literally have nothing to do with them. Now, Jewish people who are here in America, of course, are going to take sides. This is understandable from a cultural perspective or a religious perspective, and that I get. But if you're not connected in that way, what business is it of yours? Well, Iran, nuclear war, right? Really? I mean, okay. Do you really think Iran's going to lob nukes at us? I don't. They've never been a credible nuclear threat to us, and unfortunately, the Trump administration has only exacerbated their ability to be a nuclear power. So that's unfortunate. But it's not like the problem all starts with Trump. This is centuries of conflict and warfare in the Middle East, and it has absolutely nothing to do with us or our lives. So I have no compulsion of any kind to take sides in the Iran versus Israel conflict that Israel just started. Nor do I take sides in the Israel versus Gaza, conflict. I think both sides are disgustingly wrong. And my metric from my own personal metric, since you're asking me about this, isn't the stuff I monologue about. I've done one show like a year or two ago about the Iran-Gaza conflict, and I made it clear then, if your side is the side that is telling itself that you need to kill their children, you're a fucking asshole. Period. That's my metric. That's my line in the sand for me, because I come at the world through a lens of human rights and decency and kindness. And violent conflict is not necessary in the situations in the Middle East, but a whole bunch of people over there, for reasons that I don't understand and don't pretend to know fully, not deep culturally, right? I understand surface level stuff. I understand historical reasons. I understand economic reasons, but there's deeper reasons for the animosity and hatred between those peoples, which isn't my business and not my thing, right? But my position is always, always, always going to be, and this includes America's war crimes as well over time, okay? I ain't down with that either. If your side or your military leadership or your political leadership is cool with killing kids indiscriminately because it's just necessary, yeah, fuck you, right? You are on the wrong side of this. And if both sides believe that that is what is necessary, which is, kind of where things are at in many ways with this stuff, then both sides have no moral high ground. At a moral plane, forget it. That's my take. It's my hot take. It's not a deep take. I understand that, right? I know there are deeper levels of analysis or other ways of thinking about these conflicts that don't have to bring in the moral question. When a country or people are fighting for their against a genocidal effort being made against them, then the moral argument of, killing kids and this kind of thing to them becomes a whole different conversation. And I get that, but I'm not them. And I'm not going to be them. I'm not living in Gaza. I'm not living in Israel. I don't have that reality on a day-to-day basis. So for me to sit here in Denver, Colorado and judge those people, one side or the other, is pretty high and mighty of me. To understand them as best I can and the forces that created the situation is about the best I can do. And I find it better to do that without laying a lot of judgment over the top of it. But where my judgment comes in is on the moral plane, because I'm distant enough from it that I get to look at it that way. If I was involved in it, the picture would be different. Of course it would, right? So that's where I come from on that as an American living in Denver, right? That's my hot take. Okay, wow, we are really coming down to the wire. Damn, you guys asked me so many great questions. Let me see if I can power through some of these. Asex222, an easy one. Do you think Miscavige knows it's all a scam, or is there a kernel of it he probably believes, or he's developed his own theory on top of Hubbard's works? I think all of the above, depending on what time of day you're talking to him. At this point, I'm kind of thinking that way, right? I think Miscavige is all over the place. And it's hard to judge deep-seated beliefs solely by action and vice versa. It is hard to know with somebody like Miscavige, who is so psychotic, so off of reality, that it's hard to look at a person like that and, you know, peer into their mind, right? If we didn't have L. Ron Hubbard's affirmations, that man would be so much more of a mystery to us. And we don't have Miscavige's affirmations. We don't have his personal stuff. We just have anecdotes from people who knew him, who tell us what they perceive in him. And they're good. They're better than nothing. But they're all over the place, aren't they? Because 20 people will give you 20 versions of the exact same person or exact same event. So it's a tough answer. So I'm going to not punt. I've literally answered this question many times with all the above. And I think it really depends on the time of day that you're talking to the guy as to where his head is at. I think it's kind of like that. Okay, X-Cyan, remind us what your tattoo says, Chris. Yes, right here. It's chaos, be kind. This was from Patton Oswalt, from his wife, Michelle, his deceased wife, is where this phrase comes from. And it's my motto in life, and I try every day to remember it. Sometimes I fail. Sometimes I get pissed off at stuff, but I tattooed it on myself so that I would remember it and always go back to it. And the other one that I want to tattoo on the other side, I still haven't done it. It's been years, but the one I'm going to put on this one is, why so serious? And I will share that I do have this one too. And I feel now more than ever that this has some very personal significance for me, beyond just being a Star Wars fan. Okay, moving right along. Are you going to watch the Scientology protests in Los Angeles? No, I don't think I'm going to. I've got a lot of other stuff I got to do. But I might on Rewind or something. I mean, I don't know if there's something compelling happening there, or I feel that there's something effective going on there. I would certainly check it out. So we'll see. See what I hear about it. Okay, Sam Slade. On LinkedIn, there are profiles built for Scientology execs with similar formatting, capitalization. Is this an OSA attempt to net or collect information on anyone trying to reach people in the hole? I have no idea. I avoid LinkedIn like the plague. I hate that place. I think LinkedIn is one of the most cesspool, awful representations of the internet and how it's used ever. So I don't go there much. And I don't know why OSA would be doing some kind of information collection operation there, but they could. I mean, it's not an invalid question, or I'm not saying you're off for thinking that. But I have no idea what OSA's intention would be for setting up anything on LinkedIn of all places. Okay, I'm sorry guys, I'm gonna have to get going now because I need to get going and record my show with Tony, and we've been doing this for 2 hours. Let me take up this last one, since we're wrapping up the show, which is from Apple Cider Vinegar, asks, do you offer street epistemology to people? Yes, I am more than happy to educate people on street epistemology. I've done podcasts with Anthony Magnabosco, which you can look up. Anthony Magnabosco. You can look him up on my channel, and you can find videos that we've done describing and talking about street epistemology in detail. But as part of my consultation work that I do with people, you bet I offer some, I do some street epistemology type questioning with people all the time. I don't formalize the process when I'm talking with somebody on a consultant basis. I just sort of am talking to them and questioning them about things. It's not like, okay, now begins the street epistemology. Okay, good. Now we're over with the street. It's not like that kind of a thing for me. But I can certainly talk about it or use it with people and do. So there you go with that. All right, guys. Just because of time, I'm going to have to get going here. You guys are awesome. Thank you very much for coming around. Please do like the video. Apparently that matters. I don't say that enough. You can get my book on Amazon. It's where I self-published it. Audiobook, ebook, and hard copy format you can get. And you can contact me anytime through my askforshelton@gmail.com, or otherwise you can reach out to me if you need consultation or some kind of help from me directly. Okay. And on that note, I'll see you guys soon. Bye-bye.